en el vecindario todo es fiesta y alegría, porque ya el boricua tiene la cerveza que quería.
Good evening. Welcome to another segment of EDuTV. I am your host, Greg Perkins. And we have a young lady who I've been so thrilled to meet after reading about her in the papers. Dr. Wendy Bradshaw, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's nice to meet you. I'm glad to be here.
Nice to meet you as well. Dr. Bradshaw became, is it famous or infamous?
Infamous, I believe. It depends on who he's talked to.
I'm going to let you stay on the famous side.
Okay.
Because she is a teacher, and we like to represent all viewpoints here on EDuTV. And she became sort of fed up with the system, but I'm going to let her tell that story. Okay? So, Dr. Bradshaw, tell us about teaching. How did you get involved, and what led you to express yourself to that point?
Well, I am the daughter of a teacher. My mom taught for 38 years in the same county that I taught in. So I went to Jesse Keene Elementary School with my mom. That's where I started school, and it is consistently one of the bottom 300 schools in the state.
Okay.
But I managed to receive a wonderful education there. I knew that I wanted to be a teacher since I was a small child. I played teaching with my dolls. I would try to arrange a classroom when we had playtime in class in kindergarten.
So teaching's always been a passion?
Yes, teaching has always been a passion. I've always wanted to be a teacher. My mom tried so hard to dissuade me from teaching. Even in the mid-90s, I graduated in 97 from high school, and she tried to talk me out of becoming a teacher because she said that the profession was losing respect, that the politics of it were not about the children anymore, and that I wasn't ever going to make a lot of money
But
teaching.
You continued because that was your passion.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is a really good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because most people will go their whole lives and they never discover their passion.
Right.
And then they're dissatisfied in the end.
Right.
So I admire you for still pursuing your passion, even if your mom dissuaded you.
Yes. Well, then I went to Polk Community College is what it was at the time. It's since changed to a state college, and from there I moved to Florida Southern College, and I taught in their preschool lab, and I went out and visited schools as part of my internships and fell in love. I was going to be a kindergarten teacher,
okay.
And I fell in love with students with disabilities. And they were, inclusion was just starting to really happen then. So there were children with special needs in the regular classrooms, and they were in the classrooms where I was interning, and it is just such an indescribably wonderful feeling to work with little kids.
Right, so you really had a sincere desire to help people learn and to become educated.
Yes, and I seem to have a particular talent for helping kids who had difficulty getting it.
Okay.
Just finding new ways, thinking out of the box, and that's how I really started pursuing special education. And I was designing special materials in college and then passing them out to the teachers.
You were designing materials in college? Oh my God.
Well, no, it was so much fun. And
that's not what I was doing in college,
right.
but I like that, yeah.
So I did that, and actually Polk County had a teacher shortage in the early 2000s, so they hired me for my final internship as a long-term substitute right into the classroom, and my first position was in preschool. It was a pre-K ESC teacher, which means I had a classroom of 3 and 4-year-olds who all had some sort of diagnosed disability, and when I went into the classroom, I had a little guy, and he was on the autism spectrum, and he was the first student that I'd ever worked with on the autism spectrum. And there wasn't any special training then. In the early 2000s, we were still learning a lot about autism, and classes, training for working with students with autism was just coming out. So I did what I thought was best for young students, and when he shouted out, or if he broke the rules of the classroom, I put him in timeout.
Right.
Because that's what you do. You put
Right.
students in timeout until one day he looked at me and he said, "Miss B, you go to timeout." Because he was upset with me, and I
Right.
realized he had no idea why I was sending him to timeout. It was a place you went when you were mad at somebody or when the teacher was mad at you. So from there, I immediately, I taught for a year. I taught students with emotional behavior disorders, but I went right back for my master's degree in behaviors and got my autism endorsement because I wanted to know the best way possible to meet the needs of all these kids and to not make mistakes like that again. And I was a young teacher, but I guess part of being a good teacher is knowing that you have to keep learning.
That's right.
You have to keep doing what's best. You have to keep researching and keep up with the research and then keep applying those practices to the classroom. So after a few years, I went back for my doctorate in curriculum and instruction because I wanted to learn how to design materials. If what I needed wasn't available, I wanted to know how to do it.
Right.
How to make it for my students. So I didn't go for my doctorate so that I could get out of the classroom.
Right.
I went for my doctorate so I could get better at doing what I did in the classroom.
A thirst for designing the appropriate responses instead of timeout.
Right.
Because I've been reading a lot of books, and I've got one of my friends, he's a business owner, and he gets so frustrated when people don't do things correctly. And he'll say, well, I tell them to do this broad thing. And what I've been reading, you can't tell a person to do something broad. Like, why don't you sit down and behave? Well, specifically, what does that mean?
Right.
Hey, Johnny, I'm going to need you to sit down for the next 5 minutes.
Right.
And can you not interrupt me while I'm teaching?
Right.
But I promise I'm going to get to you. Is that okay?
Right.
That sounds silly, right?
No, it doesn't.
That's right.
Sounds accurate.
But that's right. But to my friend who owns a business, he does. I say, dude, that's not dude.
Right.
He's my friend, so I said,
Right.
so I said, that's not appropriate just to give someone a broad command like
because
that.
you can interpret that in many, many different ways, so you have to be very specific when you have something specific that you want.
Which is why you went back for your master's.
Yes, which is why I went back for my master's, and then for my doctorate, I also got very involved in, I teach in Polk County. We are a high poverty county. We're also very culturally and linguistically diverse. So I went to USF, and they have a focus on urban education, but specifically cultural and linguistic diversity.
What does that mean? We hear that term a lot now.
Cultural and linguistic
No,
diversity?
urban. No, urban.
Oh,
What
urban.
does that
See?
mean? Come on, what does
Now,
that mean?
okay, I think it's code, but
Code for
high population of minorities. That's what urban education. However, in Polk County, we have a lot of rural schools that are still very diverse.
Right.
Or they're not diverse, they are very undiverse, as in they're 90, 95, 98% Hispanic, or or they have a majority of students who are African American or Black. So, when you have a school, I think that was one of the first things that I got from my professor is she said, stop referring to schools as diverse. If there are a 100% Hispanic school, that is not a diverse school. If there are, because there's not a diversity among the student body then.
Okay.
So if you're saying diverse, you mean that there is a range of students from different cultures or languages there. So we use, it seems that in education there's a lot of code for things that mean other things.
Right.
But I do feel that USF really prepared me to work, and USF is in Tampa, so it is an urban environment. But
Florida's becoming, even our nation's becoming like that. Because I was telling a friend on the way here that kind of where I live, sometimes I go into Publix, right? Which is Florida, it's Florida based,
right?
And it's regional. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only person that speaks English, aside from the people that are already there. But I'm okay with that.
Right.
Because I see that as a richness.
Right.
All the different food, song, dance, I just love it. So.
Absolutely. Well, see, and it's something else we've gone away from in education is, we used to have multilingual kindergartens in first grades, and, we really brought in in Polk County, at Jesse Keene, or at other schools, they would have these multilingual or kindergartens where they'd have the teacher who spoke Spanish and English, and she'd teach in both languages. So the students who spoke English primarily were learning Spanish, and the students who spoke Spanish primarily were learning English, but they really learned from each other, and that was such a nice I've never heard anyone who actually taught it or who went through those classes speak negatively of it,
Right.
because the students all brought their own strengths.
Right.
And when you're very young, you know, your brain is more able to learn languages.
That's right. You're less intimidated by that process.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it really respected those students it really respected the Hispanic students for what they brought to the table and the richness of their experiences. Instead of them always being the ones that were catching up and trying to learn what everybody else already knew, they already knew, and they, you know, and they went back and forth. So there really was a respect for both. And we don't have that
Right.
sort of program anymore.
Right. So you have all this great passion. You're so inspired about education that you go back, you get your master's,
Yes.
and you get your doctorate.
Yes.
Now, all of a sudden, we see this letter of resignation because you're fed up. So how do you go from having this great desire and passion to teach kids to being fed up with the system?
I have been increasingly fed up with the system. However, it was finally the tipping point where I realized I couldn't work within the system anymore, that if I wanted to help change happen, that I was gonna have to do it outside the system. Because Polk County, and it's not, I realized that it's not just a county thing, that this is within a larger context of here's what the state is saying that the counties have to do, and then here's what the federal government is saying that the states have to do. But there are still issues in Polk County that they have decided that because of the state requirements, that what you should do is you should only teach from this textbook or this set of books that they ordered specifically. The curriculum right now in Polk
So you
County,
can't be creative and bring anything?
no. And what that is, you know, in my classroom, in my self-contained classroom, I still did have some freedom there. I could pull the materials that were best for my students in my classroom. But part of what I do as a special educator is I want them out in the general education classroom. I want them out there in a
Right.
regular kindergarten,
Right.
regular first grade, regular second grade classroom.
And that's called inclusion,
Right,
right?
that's
Where you
inclusion.
don't want them isolated.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So when I would try to go out and help those students participate, you know, they didn't need to be in my self-contained classroom anymore where they were only with other kids with disabilities. They needed to be out there with their peers. And, you know, I would get kids who made, I had 2 boys specifically who made over 1.5 years worth of growth in reading when I got them. They didn't know all their letters. When they left me, they were reading on a first grade level. They were in 2nd grade. I took them out to 2nd grade and they said, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about that anymore. We
So
have
they
to
wanted to stop the growth? Or the
because
progress?
they won't, you are supposed to be able to differentiate instruction, which means that you take, you know, the general goals and the general standards, and then you adapt the instruction to meet the needs of the students within those standards. So yes, we want them to read on a 2nd grade level. They're not quite there yet. So maybe we could simplify the text so that it would be easier for them to read. So they got the same story, but it was written at a level that they could read and feel proud of.
Okay.
Or their math problems. If they're on grade 11 in math, but we're doing word problems, then you write the word problems easy enough for them to read, because they can do the math, but if you write it at too hard of a level, then they can't read it. So then they can't access the math. So then they'll fall behind in math where they weren't before.
Okay, we have about 1 minute before
Okay,
our
I'm
first
sorry.
break. No,
Okay.
you're fine, because we're going to dig deeper into that letter of resignation and what are some solutions. Like, I like to invite everybody on here, but I'm saying if we come on here and we identify a problem,
We
how
need to
can
do
we
the
fix it?
solution, yes.
Now, and if you and I can figure that out, we'll be millionaires.
Exactly.
All right, so we're going to dig a little deeper into that. But on the resignation letter, and they're saying inclusion, tell me about that in about 30 seconds, that you had these kids, they were doing well in the self-contained autism unit. And
No, it was just self-contained. It was all kinds of kids. Kids with learning disabilities,
Okay.
just kids with behavior problems.
But how does the
autism.
mainstream thing work? How do they get into the regular classroom? Is it like for an hour a day? Or?
I was trying to send them for most of the day
Okay.
because when you go out into real life, you don't only go to real life for part of the day and then stay in special life for the other part of the day.
Because they're going to need to get a job and be able to take care of
Exactly.
themselves. Yes, I agree with that. Folks, stay tuned with us for the second segment with Dr. Wendy Bradshaw.
My name is Nilmarie Zapata, and I am a Latina role model because I believe that you can overcome any circumstances that come in your way and be the best version of yourself.
Hello, I'm Sandra Rivera, and I'm a Latina role model. Whatever your struggles are in life, whatever you don't have or don't have access to, don't use that as an excuse for not pursuing your dreams and moving forward. Get out of your own way and get out of your comfort zone, and you will be amazed at the growth that you will experience.
Welcome back to part 2 of our segment with Dr. Wendy Bradshaw, who was a committed, passionate, dedicated teacher, and all of a sudden she decided to post a letter on Facebook, right?
Yes.
And then it got picked up by all types of news organizations, had more than 62,000 hits.
Yes.
Okay.
We're up to 85 now, I think.
Over 85,000
Yeah.
hits. All right, now, Dr. Bradshaw, you are passionate about education, okay? You want to help change the system.
Yes.
So I am going to say to you, Dr. Bradshaw, if we keep losing the best teachers because they are frustrated, what type of responsibility do you bear? Because you were impacting lives positively.
Right.
So I guess you're saying that you can still impact them from the outside. And if so, tell me how you plan to do that.
Okay, well, I guess my first response is what you allow is what will continue.
Okay.
And if basically.
So are you an agitator?
I am an agitator.
Oh, I like that.
So, but
Radical?
basically, yeah, no, not.
Or
I wouldn't say radical. Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, I was facing a choice, and my choice was either to go along with the system as it is and just try to shield students from the harm that was being done, or to stand up and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And that decision was easy. It was, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do something that I know is not good for children just because someone above me says you have to do it. When my professional training all says, no, it's not right.
Right, you're reading the research saying
Right.
that this approach is not right.
Right, absolutely.
But we have politicians in Tallahassee
Right.
that are just pulling decisions out of their
Right,
head.
and then the district telling you, you know, you have to use this, but that's not right for this kid. It doesn't matter, you have to use it anyway. So I made that decision first. That was the easy one. I'm not going to do that anymore. There isn't teacher tenure anymore. I'm not commenting on that. What I'm saying is that at what point do you stand up in your job and you say, I'm not going to do the job that you're telling me to do anymore? You're either going to get fired or you leave.
Okay.
I chose to resign as opposed to being dismissed, because I would have been dismissed for refusing to do what they told me to
Yeah,
do.
but I think, you know, I read the stats on teacher shortages. There is a shortage of teachers in the United States.
There is.
There's the enrollment of kids studying education is down 21%. And I know in Orange County, the stats are like every year 15% of jobs go unfilled. So in some of those classrooms, those teachers don't have any thing whatsoever.
No.
So how can a good, solid teacher, how can the system go after somebody like you when you're benefiting the kids?
The system right now is more worried about people complying with the system than they are about the actual education of children.
Okay.
They are worried about test scores, but the thinking about that is that if we make it rigid enough, if we script it enough, if we tell you what to do enough, and if we make you practice taking tests enough, then you'll do better. The research tells us the complete opposite, that too much focus on the test actually makes the students do more poorly. Also, it causes teacher burnout, and that these standardized test scores don't actually reflect how good of a job teachers are doing. Because there are so many other variables going into education.
No, I completely agree with you on that, because my daughter, who's a graduating senior, right? She's passed all the math tests and stuff.
Right.
And then she'll ask me something simple as, hey, Daddy, that dress says 30% off. She's a senior now.
Right.
And the dress is $100. She goes, how much will I save? Now, this is a girl who's passed Algebra 1 and Geometry. So I think she just studied just to pass the test,
Well, and that's what
but
it
she has
is.
no idea
But
of
we're not
what
doing
numbers
hands-on
mean.
application anymore,
Yeah.
right? You know, and I have a piece about that. I'm an excellent test taker. I'm really good at test taking. So my husband's a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
He is brilliant at putting things together, designing new, things. He's just really good at that. He's excellent at math. He made it through differential equations, through all these calculations. I got a higher math score on my SAT than he did. You don't want me building your rocket.
That's right.
You want him building it. But because he gets anxious at tests, that test didn't reflect our math knowledge or accurately. I'm good at it. He's not. You know.
Because you've developed a system.
I'm good
on
at
the
test
approach.
taking.
Yes.
Yes. So I think that's one piece. Another piece is that, you know, the pay for performance piece just went into that came down the pipe this year. So that as a special education
How does that work?
teacher,
A lot of people may not know about the
this
pay
is
for
fun.
performance.
Okay. Well, it means that you are graded as a teacher. Your evaluation depends partially on your students' test
Was
scores.
it like 50%?
It was 50. I think they brought it down to 30.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe
It
30,
was-
33,
yeah.
something like that.
However, here's the problem. I've always been, you know, I got highly effective ratings every single year that I taught. This year, there would be absolutely no way, if I had stayed, for me to be considered a highly effective teacher, because if my students were in my classroom, they had to have been at least 2 years behind academically. But I'm measured by the same tests. They take the exact same tests. So if they're not on grade level, then they'll show a lower performance, which then reflects on me. So it says that I'm a bad teacher, even if they're in my room, because they're below level. Why would I stay if you're going to cut my paycheck because I'm doing what I'm supposed to?
After you've been a highly effective teacher.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I read a story about a guy in Tallahassee who was like voted teacher of the year.
Yeah.
And then under the new evaluation system, he was like not highly effective.
Yeah,
So
no.
he's like, oh my God, I went from being like teacher of the year to beginning teacher status
and
almost.
it stings. You know, as a professional who puts you know, it was my own money that I put into obtaining an education. And most teachers who go on to get higher degrees, they pay for it out of their own pockets. So no one else is paying for that. And then to be told that information, that knowledge is useless, that we should just read the script that's given to us and pipe down. You know, if you want the best and the brightest people to be teachers, then you have to honor their professional knowledge.
Yeah, so you have a PhD, right?
Yes.
But you think you would have been fired as a teacher?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how are we going to fix it? How can you still have an impact from the outside? I read something, and you're doing homeschool curriculum.
Yes.
Tell us some other things that you're doing to still be able to help these kids that need help, to help parents, and to still be able to maintain a living for yourself.
Well, there's a few things I'm doing. One, I'm tutoring some of my prior students right now to help them along while I'm outside the system. I'm advocating. I'm going to the school board meetings. I stand up and speak.
Very good.
Teachers and parents are sending me their concerns. I stand up and represent them at the meetings. And I am working with a few like-minded individuals to start a private school. But
Private or charter?
private, and
You don't want to go to charter
no
route?
federal. We're not taking any federal funds.
Why not?
Because I don't want, the federal government has mucked up education enough. I want their hands off my school. We will be accountable to the parents of the students that we are teaching. We will have educational standards that are very high. But I'm not going to put students through a curriculum that is not appropriate. My curriculum is based on research.
Okay.
And our curriculum, it's going to reflect what students need to be able to do. And it's going to play to their strengths, and it's going to be receptive to their needs. We're not going to try to fit them all in the same box. Some students are better at math, some students are better at science, some students are beautiful artists. I'm not going to take that away from them and make them just do test prep. And that's what's happening in schools now.
Yeah, because when I was reading part of your resignation letter, you said they've taken the joy out of teaching.
Yes.
So how are you going to put the joy back in teaching? And then let me ask you this, right?
Yes.
I think we play around with people too much, right?
Yes.
To me, I think education, I think you should have the arts, all this stuff, right? But the ultimate goal is that what? You have to earn a salary
Yes.
so you can pay your bills. So why don't we educate kids like that? Say, look, you're going to need this because you're going to get a salary. So is that part of your mission? Because you said you want to segue the kids out because eventually they're going to have to get a job and take care of themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Wait, which part of that? That was a lot.
I know. The
was a lot.
part about
How am I bringing joy back, or how are they going to earn a living?
both.
Okay.
How are you going to bring joy back, and how are you going to keep them focused on you need to learn this so that you're able to take care of it?
Right. Well, you do begin with the end in mind, but the problem is that everyone has just got the end in mind. They've got tunnel vision, and they're not looking at all the different ways to get to the same spot. You know, there's not just one freeway to adulthood.
Right.
There are a lot of different roads that people would do better on and take. So I guess that's part of bringing the joy back to learning, is to Let students show you what they're good at and what they're interested in, and then you can design education. I can teach students to read using books about trains or books about trucks or books about princesses or books. You know, you don't have to stick to this rigid curriculum, and then that's what they're trying, because curriculum companies make a lot of money off insisting that you can only use their products.
Yeah, and they're doing that because they want to create the books for the masses.
Right.
When I saw, there was a thing on 60 Minutes, there was this autistic kid, right? He couldn't speak or whatever, but they found out that he was really good at math. And the guy had a photographic memory.
Yes.
You could put him in front of any scene, he would draw this thing down to the detail.
Right.
And this guy, an advocate, sort of like yourself, they helped him to start getting paid for his work.
Yes.
This guy was awesome.
Right.
Yeah. So is that would be part of the theme for any type of school that you're gonna have, to zero in on specifically the things that the kids can do and to help to hone those skills?
Yes, well, and to bridge there, you know, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. You use your strengths to help compensate for your weaknesses. But to do that, you have to give the teachers freedom to teach. You have to hire good teachers. You have to hire, you know, people who really understand what they're doing, and then you have to let them do their jobs. So, I mean, that's one way right there in the public school system that not just Polk County, but a lot of other counties could take the example. Lay off the teachers. Let them do their job. Keep the accountability, that's fine. You know, I don't mind being accountable for my students' progress, but don't tell me that I have to use this book and do this on this day and in this way and using this pencil, and then say, oh, well, that didn't work, it's your fault. Well, you set it all up.
Okay.
Let me set it up, let me do my job, and then and then yes, my students' work will speak for itself.
What do you stand on, we've had some people on here from Opt Out, and it's over testing. Now, some recent changes in the legislative system, they have, now I don't know if you were with the superintendents, but they kind of pushed back a little bit and said, look, even we're starting to believe now this is a little too much. So where do you stand on the whole Opt Out, or do you believe in assessment just to see where the kid is, but not, what do they call it, when it's so heavy that it may cause a kid to fail or not be able to graduate high school?
Oh yeah, no, it can't be weighted that heavily. That's ridiculous. And in Polk County, we're going through that now. They've decided to weigh the end of course exams 30%. It's not required by the state. That's Polk County made that decision. So now they're pitting the students of our county. They're weighing their grades more heavily. So they're actually hurting the chances of some students. They're competing against students all across the state for the same college slots. But Polk County has decided that they're going to weigh the end of course exams more heavily than the other counties, which is going to hurt students who don't test well, but who understand who understand the material well.
Right.
And yet, I'm the Polk administrator for Opt Out Florida.
Oh, are you? So you're on the side of Opt Out?
Yes, I'm
okay, good. Because I have a question for you.
I'm on the Opt Out side.
That's okay, because I have another Opt Out person coming on next week. I agree with just about 80% of what you say, except Opt Out.
All right.
But we're all going to work together.
Right.
We're going to work together, right? So now on the Opt Out thing, we got about 1 minute left, right?
Yes.
So eventually, that kid that you're going to train, he's going to be this really creative person with special skills. But what about?
Oh no, he'll have a solid foundation in reading and math.
Okay, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. No. I know you're going to start academic. But what happens when he has to take the nursing exam, the firefighting exam, what happens there?
Oh, I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. And they will be able to do that. I think the issue is that we are creating a lot of these students test anxiety by over-testing them starting when they're 8 years old or 7 years old or 6 years old.
And when it's so heavy.
Right. Yes. I don't have a problem with a 20-year-old taking a nursing exam because they're a grown-up. I do have a problem with you sitting a 6-year-old in front of a computer and telling them to pick A, B, C, or D, and then the score flashing up and you saying you failed.
Well, they can use iPhones and get on Facebook.
Oh,
you can't take that.
No.
I'm messing with you, Dr. Bradshaw. Okay, folks, there you have it. And we're going to have Dr. Bradshaw back because I think she's very smart and intelligent.
Thank you.
And she is an agitator.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. Greg Perkins, EDuTV, and our guest, Dr. Wendy Bradshaw. Good night.
Good night.